First speaker in this session, Gil Eckrich. Hope I pronounced that right. Native plants are for the birds. So,
what I'll be talking about is a subject near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure many of yours, Native Plant Society. And I think I've yet to find a single person who's interested in that who doesn't appreciate birds and bees, and maybe a few butterflies. So I will concentrate on birds and the native plants. Now, the birds and the plants that I'm talking about are the ones that I have seen and photographed here in Central Texas. You're from very varying areas of the state, but in each and every one of your areas, you also have a matching equivalent to the ones that I'll be showing you. And I'm going to get started with what is nowadays the perfect lawn. Don't throw things at me. Tell me that's not the case. From homeowners associations to social media to television, you name it. That's it. That's the ideal. I don't believe in ideals. That's mine. That's my backyard. I've had 163 species of birds that I've seen. Yes, ma'am. Now what's in the back is Lake Stillhouse Hollow. You can see it. So yes, I see some birds that are flying from one lake to the other, but they're over my place. Most of the photos that I'll be showing you are locally taken by me over a number of years. I worked for over 20 years in an organization called the U.S. Army. And you go, what's that got to do with birds? One of the most important bird events that I ever had was in Korea. They have a bird that's their equivalent of the whooping crane. That's all. Red-naped or Manchurian crane. And it spends the winter in the demilitarized zone in Korea. I didn't know anything about it, but I was called by my general that a visiting dignitary wanted to see the Manchurian cranes. I had full access to the demilitarized zone. I went, yeah, I can do that. So I took him on a trip into the DMZ. And we got to see them. Amazing birds. And they were doing the display and everything. Well, a few days later, I'm talking to a North Korean officer. And I told him about it. We're laughing. He says, well, you know, we count those birds too. I said, sure, they're your sacred birds also. And we looked at each other. I'll give you my data. Let me know what numbers you have. For the first time since the end of the war, we exchanged something without going through God and above. So what was the result? The return of American remains is reinitiated because of birds. And here in the area, I worked for 22 years on Fort Hood as a wildlife biologist. Various things. Some of these photos are from there. So let's drive on. What are the advantages? You can read it there. I was referred to the master gardener. Can you hear me now? Good. I'm not used to mics, as you can tell. But the master gardener created it. Anybody else is an amateur. Low maintenance. I do not water anything on my property unless I'm trying to grow a new plant. I help it get started, and then I become a Darwinian gardener, and it's hands off. They're tough. I don't have to take care of them. Wildlife, I've already mentioned 163 bird species. But looking out of the window from my computer, I saw a fawn being born earlier this year. I've had coyote come to my ponds, bobcat. I found tracks and scat from a big kitty cat. I didn't see the big kitty cat, but I know she was there. And it's year round. I don't worry about spring. I don't worry about fall. There's a benefit, what I can see, and how wildlife benefits from it. Right now, at this time of the year, probably my most valuable plant is a shrub or small tree, whatever you wish to call it, the kidney wood. Why is this so important? I want you to take a look at this photo. How many bugs, that's a nice scientific term, can you spot? There's a bunch, and one arachnid, one spider in there. Because at this time of the year, when it's in bloom like this, everybody comes to feed on it. So if you have a plant with flowers that have so many visitors, who else is going to be there? Well, let's take a look there. Is this a plant? Yeah. Look in there. Quite a few insects in there. But where the insects are, you've got this. Now, how do we imagine what hummingbirds eat? We all know nectar, right? But you know, it's kind of like you with your kids or grandkids or whatever, giving them nothing but Mars candy bars. There's a value to it. But what do these birds really need is minerals. And that sugar water, that nectar, whatever you wish to call it, doesn't have that. But what's inside of that little itty bitty flower? Not much nectar, but there are bugs in there. And that is the value for the hummingbirds, especially in spring when they have to have calcium for egg laying. No other choice, they have to have it. Carolina wren. I love these guys. Probably the only bird locally that sings year round. And if you've got a garage that you leave open at the wrong time, I'll give you a guarantee you're going to have a guest nesting. That's okay. But they're feeding on there, and what they're getting are insects. Carolina chickadee. Eating insects. Again, nutritional value. Golden cheek warbler. I've got them on my place nesting. Still an endangered species. Got a question to ask. What's our state bird, y'all? Which mockingbird? The northern. Oh, you mean the Yankee mockingbird? This is the only bird species that only breeds in Texas. Enough said. But what is he? And yes, that is a male doing there. He's getting ready for migration. And my last one left a little bit early this year on 7 August. is where my last one left. But what they're getting ready is they need the nutrients for the migration. And that's why that guy is feeding in there, looking for insects. Right now, migrants from up north are coming through this part of Texas, the Nashville warbler, by the dozen. Again, nutrition, food, sustainment for migration. They have to have it. There's a beautiful little bird, same thing, Wilson's warbler. How far up north? Canada. Yellow warbler. The only bird that nests in all of the continental US. No other species is known for that. Native species. Native species. I'm not talking about house sparrows. This time of the year, we have, and they don't look like that anymore, the flame leaf sumac. It's a small tree. Very pretty flowers on it, but why is it called flame leaf? Could this be a reason? They're beautiful come November. I mean, look at that. What is the value? And I consider this to be probably the most valuable tree or shrub for late fall and winter in Central Texas. Again, I don't know where y'all are from, but it might very well apply to you too, depending on your location. Because everybody seemingly in the winter will feed on the berries. And these are often birds such as the thrush, eating the berry. That is a northern species that spends the winter in Central Texas and farther south. I know y'all know this guy. Everybody loves him. But speaking of which, what happened 4 years ago during that freeze? I'm watching your reactions, and some of you apparently had losses of the bluebird in your boxes that you correctly and graciously, kindly, naturally put up. Good. But to be good nest boxes, there are holes in the bottom or slits, slants. And when it got as cold as it did 4 years ago, the cold came in, and then one box had 5 dead bluebirds. Whereas the ones in those evil, and I'll talk more about them, the dead trees, were fine because they're insulated, nature. There's one, the mountain bluebird. Yes, they come here occasionally during the winter. Where do I find them? Eating the berries. There's one that we don't see very often here. Now, those of you that are from Fort Davis and farther west, yeah. I know you see them. But here, that's an unusual bird for us to see. And again, they're feeding on the berries. Chipping sparrow. The northern cardinal. You know, we're spoiled. Yeah, it's a northern cardinal. Redbird, as Texas call them. But if you're from Oregon or the state of Washington and you see your first northern cardinal, you have one reaction. Oh, what a beautiful bird. One of my cousins, I'm from Germany, by the way. I'm one of those immigrants. I came by ship. But one of my cousins in Germany had birds that he kept. His most prized possession legally was northern cardinal. because people couldn't believe how beautiful that bird is. But that's what they feed on in the winter. Rubicon kinglet, they've arrived about a week ago or so right here in Central Texas. Again, where you are, I don't know, but they just arrived here a week ago. They'll stay here until 15 May at the latest. I've never had one later than 15 May. And I want you to look at the bill. Notice how it's sharp and pointed. Anytime you see a bird with a sharp and pointed bill, what does it eat? Bugs. But in the winter, how many bugs are there, proportionally speaking? Not many. So what does even a ruby-crowned kinglet have to eat? Berries. Very important plant. Make no mistake about it. Pine warbler. Again, look at the bill. Warblers eat bugs. But if there aren't bugs, that's what they eat. It is such an important plant. Yeah, I know. What can I say? But what's important is perhaps that the white-winged dove, when I first started working on birds in Central Texas, was not here. I'm watching some of the reaction. It's a new bird. What happened? They had a freeze in the valley. And the groves, the orchards to be exact, oranges, different plants like that, froze. The owners had to, now I know where to look. Good. The owners had to cut down the orchards, all of the trees, and the birds that depended on those trees for their livelihood, for perching, you name it. What do? Well, they took the highways that lead from the valley up north, like Highway 281, and started following the highway. Now, the land around 281 looks like the rest, kind of a deserty, shrubby habitat. But wherever you had a community, you had trees. And that's where they perched. And that's where they found food. So when they came, they followed the highway. And the one thing they associate with, just like gray-tailed grackles and certain other species, is humans. In the middle of Fort Hood, where to shoot artillery and everything else into. Guess what I don't find there? They've gotten so used to people. Not even to mention some of the other birds that you know. Yellow-rumped warbler, the butterbutt. Here in the winter, insectivore, have to eat that. Another warbler, the orange-crowned, have to eat something. No bugs, fruit. Kind of a logical one there, isn't it? The red-bellied woodpecker, among other woodpeckers, like the ladderback. And here's one that I had at the house. That was the first time that this species had been seen in non-coastal North America. It was early February, cold. Why did it show up? Food. 2 days he spent there, and then when it warmed up, don't know where he went. But he came there, spent 2 days there, because it was too cold. There were no insects flying around. And a vireo, by definition, is an insectivore. There's a nest. It's a Bell's vireo nest. that low or that high, however you wish to say it, to the ground. The short shrubby vegetation is critical and essential for these birds. So if you have a perfect landscape where you trim everything up to 12 feet, where are they going to nest? They're out of luck. If you happen to have goats, how high up does a goat browse? How high it can stand on its rear legs. So if you're a bird that nests here, you're out of luck. There's a good Texas plant. Don't you love the aroma, for those of you who are familiar with it? That's a great plant. Evergreen. Once you get it going, don't want. Butterflies love it. Bees love it. What am I getting at? Many of our pollinators that we have to rely on take advantage. Well, see, I'll try, I promise. Red bud. An obvious one. How high does a red bud grow? And I don't mean an eastern red bud. I'm talking about Texas or Mexican. Not very high. Are they single trunk? No. Multi-trunk. Leaves hanging down. Where do birds nest? Right there. Very important as a nesting substrate. And let's be honest, when it comes to the end of February to about mid-March, tell me of a more beautiful plant. Go ahead, go for it. There's a black-capped vireo nest, and this is unusual. Trying to think if this one I've got. Nope. What's unusual here is I want you to take a look at the size of the adult vireo. Notice he's banded. We know exactly who he is. We have his name and address. And here's the nest about at this height. Look at the size of this guy here. A lot bigger than the vireo. That's a cowbird. What happens is the brown-headed cowbird will find a nest to parasitize, lay an egg in. That egg hatches sooner. And before too long, the fast-growing cowbird chick will either push the nest owners out or starve them up, because which mouth is going to get fed by dad or mom? The biggest one. Makes sense. Mexican buckeye. God, I love that plant. Red admirals certainly like it. One of our great butterflies. I want you to look at the leafcutter bee. What do you note about that little bee? That yellowish stuff? Pollen. Superb pollinator. Very essential to our landscape. Beautyberry. This one needs a little bit of moisture. I'll be the first to tell you that. So where do you find it? Usually around creeks and things like that. All the other ones that I've shown you are pretty much bone dry landscape. This one needs some moisture. Possum holly. For those of you interested in acquiring this plant, in the winter it's bare, there are no leaves. But if you want one and you're going to buy one, wait until November to buy it. because you want one that is bright red berries, unless you like a blasé pink. But unless you wait until November or so to purchase it, you don't know what color the berries on the female will be. So just wait a little bit. Different birds love the berries. That's one of our wintering ones. You go, wait a minute, that's not white crowned. I can see it's kind of a brownish color. That's a juvenile. But it's one of the ones that nests up north, but spends the winter here. Field sparrow, they actually nest close to here. We have some nesting in Central Texas. Him again. They love them. Good food. Golden ball entries from further west. Now, you know that this is a xeric plant that can stand dry by looking at the leaves. Small. They got kind of a coating on them to prevent moisture loss. So you know this is a xeric, drought-tolerant vegetation. Comes from west of here. Does it do well here? Oh, yeah. Don't water it. Do not water it. Bugs go in there to feed in the flowers. There's the chickadee again. And there's the titmouse eating the fruit. Not the fruit, but the seeds. Hybrid. There's talk going on. We used to have one type of titmouse, black-crested titmouse, and then they split it into the the tufted and black-crested. We have the hybrid here, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. They're getting ready to lump them again, oh, by the way. This is a topic I'm actually reluctant to bring up. We've got stands outside that deal with the monarch butterfly. How many of y'all seen lately? How many? I noticed a little bit of skepticism or amazement or a combination. Okay, I've got to ask, what? Yeah. I've got to find out. Where, let me make sure I've got this at the right height. Where have you seen 100?
This fall, I've had about 100 come through.
Where at?
North of McKinney. Better than the spring when I only had 4, so we're doing better.
How about that? Because I want you to look around and listen to the comment. Oh. Where did you see?
This is North McKinney, Collin County.
But the point I think that I'm trying to make is, how many have you seen them like that lately? You might see a couple flying over, but 2, yeah. There's something going on. I don't have to tell you that. You, as native plant appreciatives, know how essential the native plants are to the monarch butterfly. I don't have to tell you that. Antelope horns, butterflies love antelope horns. And other bugs too. I've got them, but if I drive around Belton, Temple, and try to find antelope horns, nope. Because we've got Bermuda grass Oh, that beautiful St. Augustine. But that's a weed. What do we do with weeds? And TV tells us what to do with weeds. You gotta push. Does that, whatever chemical is, differentiate between anything? And the same goes for, you can get rid of fire ants and all you have to do is spray out a certain chemical. How many of you remember seeing, I think they're called horny toads? How many of y'all seen lately? Because they need the big red ant to feed off of primarily. That chemical that people are putting out for the fire ant really doesn't care what kind of ant you are. I'm going to kill you. That's Texas. Come on. Actually, the state has gotten better in many ways. I remember when highway strips that would have bluebonnets growing would get mowed anytime. Nowadays, they actually wait until they're kind of brownish, gone to seed. So there's progress being made in some places. I'm glad to see that. But obviously, that's Texas. Squirrelbud primrose needs moisture. Beautiful plant. Missouri primrose. I've got a story to tell. Can you tell what kind of background that's growing on? It's basically rock. Well, I was with an archaeologist and I'd given her some plants. And we're talking, she says, well, mine died. I said, really? Did you take care of them? I did, Gil. I said, what did you do? Well, I watered them and I fertilized them and I hit the brakes and pointed to the side of the trail. I said, do you think anybody has fertilized or watered that plant? She looked at me. Oh, Gil, I killed it. Huh? River primrose by name is obvious. It's a great plant to have, but you do need water. Cedar sage. You can see where it's growing. Do you have to water that plant? Don't you even? But that's the beauty of it. Standing cypress, dry, dry, dry. Takes 2 years to get up to the height once you've got the seeds out. Be patient. That's a beautiful plant. Black-chinned hummingbird agrees. Salvias. This is great. There's so many salvias. I've got a selection of them. Who do you think spreads the pollen? Invaluable. Skullcap. This one needs water. That's a beautiful native plant. Needs a wet area. I'm not going to say water, but a wet type area. And once you get it established, don't mess with it. Hands off. Texas sage. This is not the shrub. This is the actual Texas sage. Again, get it going. Hands off. Wine cup, another one in that same category. These are all native plants that are out there. Look at that foxglove penstemon. I'm seeing that. That's a beautiful plant. And if you've got one growing, let it go to seed, please. Sunflowers. That lesser goldfinch knows what he likes. What bird is that, by the way? Who said that? Exactly, red-winged blackbird. You're one of the first ones that in an audience like this that is a female red-winged blackbird. Yes, you are correct. And obviously eating the sunflower seeds. Look at that bee. Tell me that's another pollinator. Go ahead, go for it. Cardinal flower. Still blooming at my house. This is in one of my ponds. Notice where it's growing. In the water. This is not a xeric plant, trust me. It needs to be wet, totally wet, but it's beautiful. About that high it'll grow. Yeah. And hummingbirds, oh boy. Like that one. Phalaenopsis canthus. This has got to be one of the easiest plants to propagate. It's a West Texas special. You do it scientifically. You grab a seed and you go. That's it. And if you're not careful, you're going to have more than you may want to have. Some of you, I'm looking at facial and head movement, and I can see that hits the spot. Yeah. But again, for hummingbirds, you can't get a much better plant this time of year than a Phalaenopsis canthus. Okay, please play. Yes. That was filmed in slow motion video, by the way, just to let you know. Coral honeysuckle needs moisture, East Texas special. Beautiful vine. It needs moisture. Red yucca, tell me a housing development in Central Texas that doesn't have a big gate next to the main road that doesn't have red yucca. Go for it. Come on, come on. And makes sense because it needs absolutely zero care. Zero. But it's quite valuable. Tropical sage, look at the pollen on that hummer right there. That's my front yard, by the way. I already showed you my backyard. That's my front yard. Solid sage. Oh, let me go back a minute. And if you look up there, that's an eastern screech owl, occupied box. Turk's cap, needs some moisture, not too much. Native, growing right now. You know, you propagate Turk's cap, you get the fruit, the ripe fruit, and you put it in your mouth. And there's seeds in there, but there's some very tasty fruit. And once you get the seeds isolated, then you walk somewhere where you want and you go. Very difficult to propagate. That could have been taken this morning at the house. And here's something you never know. My wife wanted me to remove these weeds. And I'm an obedient husband, 54 years of practice. But sometimes I disobey. Watch her booty. Those seeds are a very important component for hummingbird nests. As you can see, that's a black-chinned hummingbird building her nest. And the most important material is spider web. 2 reasons. You'll notice the camouflage. It's the same material as on the branch. How do you get something to glue onto something? They can't buy glue at Walmart. But also when they lay eggs, the eggs are about tiny. And as tiny as a hummingbird nest is, they're fit fine. But once those eggs hatch and they grow and they get too big for the nest, but that nest has a primary component of spider web, which is elastic. It expands. And of course, as you know, spider webbing is sticky. Thus, the camouflage can be attached. Nature. Tell me a more beautiful bird in Texas. Go ahead, go for it. Go on, come on. You can't. Seeds on native grasses, important. Notice the height of those grasses. This is not mowed to a 1/4 inch. We need to have more grass, and it's got to be native mixed grass with weeds for wildlife. There's a nest there. There's her head. We have more birds nesting on the ground than in trees here. Yeah. So if we remove the substrate, they're out of luck. Rufous crowned sparrow nest, there's the nest. You see young ones. Now watch. Look up in there. I think I pushed it. Let me try it. There you go. Notice how she's sneaking up on the nest so she doesn't draw attention to herself. If you mow your grass at the wrong times of the year, or always keep it to a 1/4 inch, I'll give you a handwritten guarantee you'll never have a rufous crowned sparrow nesting on your place. Dead trees. Good gosh. Ain't no such thing. So many of our birds and other critters rely on so-called dead trees. Now, if you live in a town, in a developed area, you've got some requirements you have to consider. If you've got dead branches hanging over your house, cut them off. But if you can leave the trunk standing, especially if it's soft wood, give it a shot. I mean, we know a woodpecker's nest, obviously, in them, but how many know that the prothonotary warbler is a cavity nester? Yeah. Yeah. And they nest here. And if you're a little bit farther east of here, a double guarantee they nest in your area. So if you can, leave them standing. It's worth it. Somebody else needs them we don't realize. We think about ducks nesting on the water or around the edge. The wood duck, our most beautiful duck, I challenge anybody to say different, nests in tree cavities. And in the same tree, I mean the very same tree, bluebirds. That landowner is a friend of mine. We went to college together, and I persuaded him to let him be. They're more important dead than alive. And with that, questions? Ma'am. Wait a minute, I'm going to...
I am super impressed with everything about you, but what kind of camera equipment do you use?
Oh boy. Camera equipment has changed. When I first started my job, my boss, God bless his heart, wanted me to take pictures, and he gave me a little 126 millimeter Kodak. And I still have those pictures. Where in the corner you see this little spot there in the tree? Well, that is the golden cheek warbler. So, what do I shoot now? My favorite lens is a 200 to 600 Sony. The camera is a Sony I use nowadays, all digital, and it makes a difference. Now, is that for everybody? No, it's not. Everybody should carry a camera. And if you've ever participated in a bird count or somebody's asking, you go, but I don't know any birds. Participate, learn, enjoy, and if you have a camera, shoot. You're not going to get published in Nat Geo. I'll give you a handwritten guarantee. But maybe that image that you got of that one bird that nobody else saw or couldn't see from their respective angle, maybe that is the angle that's, wow, that's a left-handed smoke shifting, whatever. So that's what I use for, and I've got one other lens, a 600 millimeter. That doesn't leave my back deck. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Hang on,
Hello, hello.
hang on.
Hello, hello. There it is.
Whoa.
I got it now. Hey, thank you. This was a great presentation and really curious. One of the things, one of the best advice I got about 7 or 8 years ago is get rid of your bird seed feeders. And because the idea is to allow sort of these ecosystems to be created for birds and pollinators. Do you believe in that philosophy? And then more importantly, when we look at migrating birds in central Texas, you'd mentioned the flame leaf sumac as one of those because of the berries. Would you recommend any other sort of mid-story or low-story tree that will help with the migrating birds?
It depends on where you are in Texas. Here in
Down-
San Antonio, I know it well. I've got a daughter living in Bernie. Flaming leaf sumac or similar type is ideal for your location. But I know you have others there also, and I'm sure you've got to have some native plant stores there. And go there in November, not now, go in November and see what they have. And what is the texture, find out what it needs, and go by that. So that would apply to any of your areas, and you're from all over the state. What is suitable in one may not be in the other, but fit it to your area.
Find something in November in your area that is fruiting or seeding and is native, and that's going to be your best bet for finding something to plant for migrating birds.
I couldn't say it better myself. Bird seed, you can buy many different ones. The cost can be sky high or reasonable. The the one blanket one is black oil sunflower. Most things will eat it. Will some of it sprout? Yeah, that's how I get my sunflowers. But there are many other good bird mixes or bricks that you can purchase. I use them all. Most of my critters live off of what's on the trees, on my bushes, and whatever else. And I have squirrels, believe it or not. They don't care. But I encourage using them, and there are certain times of the year, and not so much in San Antonio, but from here north, it can get cold. When it gets this cold, put the seeds out, and you can do a mix, or you can even buy them where it's kind of a cream with seeds in it, and you can put it into the bark or in special containers. That's the time of year when you really want to put them out.
What are safe dates if you have to disturb with mowing or burning to avoid the ground nesting birds? What are your safe dates where you can mow or burn and avoid the ground nesting birds?
When they're not nesting. No, the best time is probably September. Because they're dry, they're bone dry, you'll get a good burn out of them. Now, if you're in a situation where if it gets too hot a burn, then you want to do it another time of the year. But if you can do it now, and there's going to be a talk at 2:15, I believe. I don't see my friends who are going to, there's one, he's looking around. Hi, John. Yeah, raise your hand. When are you giving your talk and where?
I'm sorry, the next one, 2:40. 2:40, yes.
Go listen to what he's got to say about burns. It's one thing we do in Fort Hood professionally. Sometimes on accident, 15,500 acres, but many times prescribed burns. Do not, do me a favor, with me around, use the term controlled fire or controlled burn. When you light the match, it's out of control. So that's what I would say on that. Oh,
I'm not going to mention any names, but a friend and I discuss American beautyberry. She says the birds never eat her purple American beautyberry. And I said, you know, the birds strip mine bare. But I said, mine are white American beautyberry. What is your comment about that? You know, I have put the purple in because it's prettier. But they leave that, they strip the white, and if there's nothing else left to eat, then they'll eat the purple.
How much do they eat from the beautyberry? Depends how much is available. In other words, if you've got only beautyberry and no other vegetation, you shouldn't have any problem. Oh, the color. I find it to be indifferent. Now, the only time when color does play a difference, and all of you have noticed that, is pretty little flowers. They gravitate to what? Red. Is that the only one? No, because it's the nectar they're after. But do they gravitate to red? Yes. I don't have white, so I've never had white. I can't address that.
Do you have thoughts or excitement or tidbits to share about the Grue Jay, the
I'm sorry,
hybrid?
what?
The Grue Jay, the new hybrid between the green and the blue jay?
Blue jays are resident birds, and you have to be a little bit ambivalent about blue jays. What people don't realize is, are they beautiful? Yes. But what people don't realize is they're nest predators. They will take both eggs and or nestlings of other species and pull them out and consume. Now, what should you do about that? I do nothing. Because I have others. I've got Woodhouse's scrub jay. Are they nest predators? Yep. What do? Nothing. I let nature take over. When I take over is when it's something that we humans have screwed up. Cowbirds were not a problem when they were the buffalo picker. They followed migrating buffalo, bison. So if they parasitize this nest, that nest is gone. Oh, darn. But then they would browse down the prairie and move on. The owner of this nest will re-nest. And when the new nest gets started, where is the nest parasite? 100 kilometers away. But what did we do? We wiped out the bison. We put up fences, and we put in cows that stay there, and they graze until the grass or whatever it is about that tall. And if you're a cowbird, you're reliant and you have to stay in the same area. You hit the same nests again and again and again. Whose fault is it? And nowadays, they're no longer cowbirds. Let me add that. I've got a proper new name for them. Lawnmower birds. Lawnmower bird. Think about it. What does a lawnmower do? Reduce grass. Reduce opportunities. Nature did not screw up. Cowbirds are natural. They are nest parasites, but left alone, they were not an issue until we changed the environment. Horny toads, I mentioned already. How about bobwhite quail? Oh, we all know that it's what? The fire ants. That's what you've heard. Well, may I make a suggestion that Nebraska, which has a similar decline in bobwhite quail, has got the same percentage, too close, in reduction of bobwhite quail that we have, except what is it they don't have? A single one of? The imported fire ant. Minor detail. So could it be habitat loss? Is that why you don't see the horny toad anymore? Think about when you were younger and think about climate. Those of you of a certain age, you could go into a town and you'd be in a city park. And what would be on the city park? A bunch, scientific term, of birds. In the wintertime, robins, just covered with robins. Y'all seen that many robins lately? I know you still have them, but do you see that many? Are there less robins? No. But do they have to come down here? No, they can stay in Missouri. That's all, folks.